Hey everybody, Brent Jones, New Home Source Realty. How are you? Let's do a Facebook Live. Let's do a Facebook Live about homeowners associations, HOAs, and should you buy a property that's in a mandatory HOA? What are the pros? What are the cons? What's going to drive you nuts? What are the expenses, etc., etc. So let's chat about it. Before we get started, click notifications, follow me, like this video, and leave a comment. So HOAs. I've actually had buyers, not too many, but I've actually had buyers come to me and say, I want to buy a house, but I refuse to buy a house that's in an HOA. So that's going to restrict the number of houses that you get. Typically around the 1990s, all the new houses built around then started having mandatory HOAs. Certainly when you get into the 2000s, absolutely into the 2000s, you're going to find that almost all of them have a mandatory HOA. What's the purpose of an HOA? Well, just real quickly, the purpose is so that your next door neighbor can't paint their house pink or park a 57 Chevy up in the front yard and leave it there for 6 months. The purpose is to try to maintain property values in that area without a neighbor with their bizarre ideas bringing down the property values of everybody in the whole area. I can tell you from personal experience, mine and my wife's house, we're in a nice subdivision. It's got a mandatory HOA, and not long after we moved in, we were redoing the flower beds. We had some stone stacked up by our outside AC compressors. And we got a letter from the HOA. This is still a running joke between my wife and I. We got a letter from the HOA saying that having the stones there by our AC compressors was rude and obnoxious. And I told my wife, I said, they haven't even seen rude and obnoxious yet, so hang on, I'll be happy to show them rude and obnoxious. So HOAs can be intrusive. We're going to talk about the good and the bad. But they can be intrusive, and they can be a source of irritation. But let's talk about some of the good. So if you buy a house, we're going to talk about single family houses and condos because they both are going to have mandatory HOAs, probably. So in a typical subdivision, an HOA, it's going to be mandatory. Really, they're typically not all that expensive, maybe $400 a year. That's not bad. And depending on the subdivision, you might get amenities like community swimming pool, jogging trails, catch and release fishing ponds, playgrounds for the kids, a civic community center. In some subdivisions, the HOA may even mow your front yard for you. Now, why would they mow your front yard? Because some people are just not going to take care of their yard. They're just not. And some people, you're just going to have yards that look horrible right next to beautiful manicured lawns. And some HOAs know that, so it's like, well, you know what? Let's just take that responsibility out of their hands for, an extra $25. We'll just take care of the front yard for them. We'll come out and mow every other week. And that way, the yards get to be more consistent. Now, you don't have to sign into that if you're the kind of person. My wife loves being out in the yard. If you're the kind of person that loves doing yard work, you can opt out of that. But it just kind of keeps people from having grass coming up in their flower beds, and the grass in the yard is a foot tall. So they're not going to get out there and do your flower beds, but they would mow the yard for you. If you had a condominium, you're going to have an HOA. Now, nice high-rise condominiums, you're definitely going to have an HOA, and the HOAs can be $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month. That can be expensive. But for that, you would get 24-hour concierge that would basically do anything for you. Walk your dog, receive packages, run errands, whatever. Typically in high-rise condominiums, blanket insurance is included in your HOA fee. So if the property is struck by a storm, all the exterior would be covered. And some of your utilities can be covered as well, like water and sewer. Typically all of your utilities except electricity and cable/internet. They're not going to get involved in that. And electricity can be expensive, so they're not going to get involved in that. But your other utilities would be included in that. So that's some of the good. So again, really the main goal of an HOA is to provide services, provide amenities, And basically, the real purpose of it is to keep your property values going up so that you don't have somebody in the neighborhood that's just doing bizarre stuff that's bringing down everybody else's property value. So that's really the gist of it right there, is their main purpose. Now, all of that's good. Let's talk about some of the downside. Some people on HOA boards are kind of little demigods. This is their 15 minutes of fame, and they're going to milk it for everything it's worth. You know, somebody finally gave them some power and some authority, and they're absolutely going to abuse it. And again, it's not that way all the time. There's some great HOA board members, but there's some others that are just on power trips, and they're just going to restrict you from being able to do anything and everything. For instance, they're going to tell you whether or not you can fly an American flag in your front yard. Are you kidding me? And that something like that is really a source of irritation. It's like, I'm a free American. I own this property. You're not going to tell me yes or no if I can fly an American flag. I'll see you in court. And I understand that completely. And again, that's why some of these HOAs can be just ridiculously restrictive. And by the way, you know, the subdivision, if you have just had it with the HOA that's running your area, you can fire them and go hire another one. But some of them can just be really overly restrictive. The other source of irritation is the codes are not always enforced equally. So, for instance, what the story I told you about, my wife and I, we had a few stones out by the AC compressor, and we got this rude letter from them. But you can go around the corner, and there's a lady down on the corner as you're leaving the subdivision who has grass in her flower bed, and the yard is a foot tall, and there's more weeds than there is grass, and it hadn't been motor edged and who knows how long. But yet they don't enforce anything on her. So I mean, it can be a source of irritation that they're enforcing the rules for some people, but not for all people, and not equally, it would seem. So that can be a source of irritation as well. In summary, I would say if you're going to get a house that was built in the year 2000 or newer, or if you're going to be buying a townhome or a condominium, especially if it's a high-rise condominium, or even if it's not, condominiums and townhomes are going to have HOAs, and any house built in the year 2000 or newer is going to have an HOA. So you're going to have to deal with it. Really, the summary would be it's a necessary evil. Their goal is to keep your neighbors from doing something ridiculous. Again, like painting their house pink and parking a 57 Chevy in their front yard. And if you don't think people will paint their house pink, trust me, people will paint their house pink. I've seen it, or blue. And I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, but I don't want my neighbor to paint their house blue. They will do it. What people think looks good, or what some people think is a good idea, is just going to bring property values down for the whole subdivision. So, all in all, it's just a fact of life. You're going to have to deal with it, and it's a necessary evil. So, there you go with HOAs. Anything I can do to be of help? Brent Jones, New Home Source Realty. I've been in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for 30 years. I've got a 98% approval rating on Google. Anything I can do to be of help to y'all, real estate related, feel free to call me. 214-649-4528. Again, 214-649-4528. Have a great day. Bye-bye.